I want to welcome everybody to, I guess it's the last presentation for this camp meeting. As you've been reminded online, we do have one more study this evening, which will be a Q&A. Let's open with a word of prayer. Holy God, I want to give you praise and thanks for all that you do. You've brought us through this camp meeting safely. I hope that we have individually and corporately had some clarity in questions that we may have had. In this final presentation that we're together, please continue to be with us. In Jesus' name, Amen. So I don't know if anybody else has got any thoughts about the questions that I've posed. During the break, a few of us were speaking, and Elder Tabo reminded us of a basic concept that we have. The time of the end. Increase of knowledge. We'll now call this the formalization. Sorry, let me check what's gone wrong. Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was my end. And the shut door. So we're all familiar with this pattern. And I'm just going to put it the way he did. That there's this testing period as indicated. So I spoke in the last presentation about the great test. Obviously, everybody understands the implication of the word great. We could also substitute that word for the final or the last test. And without trying to misquote him, I think he said something along these lines. We always believed that this message, I'm going to call this an unsealing. The unsealing of this message at the time of the end was salvational. For those people in our midst who aren't persuaded that the Sunday law issue is salvational, I guess you'd have to ask yourself the question, has something changed in your thinking from what we have taught in the past, what we have built upon? Or if you have another way to explain your position. So, does anybody have any comments or thoughts? So, before I speak any further, we had two questions at the end of our last meeting. Jonathan?
My question would be, or I should say that I believe that the date is salvational. But my question would be, when does it become salvational? To know the date.
If you took this line that's shown here and we were to use this template over the Sunday law dispensation, one person might tell you it would be here, and another one might tell you it would be here. So we may not be clear when it becomes salvational, be it on an individual or a corporate basis. But before we were to answer that question, it would be the one that I asked whether or not we actually believe it's salvational. So I'm going to avoid your specific question. Just remind us, I've asked two questions now. Is it salvational to know this event? And then question two, is it salvational to know that you're in this dispensation? And we didn't seem to be in consensus that these were salvational matters. And that's why we had the discussion that's shown on the graphic here, where Olataba reminded us that we used to teach that these truths, these lines, these waymarks were salvational matters. It's not the theoretical belief in this pattern, it's the experience that you go through when you live this path or this pattern. I kind of skipped over most of your question, I guess, Jonathan. Did you have a follow-up point, or Debbie?
At the end of the last meeting, all I was going to say is, in the first meeting, I had answered a question that you had posed. Is knowing the date salvational? During the first study, shortly after I was providing my answer as non-salvational, I came to understand more clearly what your question was. And I changed immediately to know that my answer was, it's salvational. And I just simply wanted to put that into the public record. I wanted to simply put that into the public record. The not knowing, as you just described, where one may say it's here, another there, was what I misunderstood. I believe it's July 18th. But the discussion on bookending, to me, indicates a process, more to do with the election. But at the same time, I believe that the point the Sunday law started in is July 18th. I believe knowing that point is salvational. And to know that we are in the Sunday law period now is salvational. And I didn't hear Elder Tebo's bit of discussion in the break, but I agree with what you've summarized. The point was that he's made. So that was all I was going to add at the end of the last meeting.
Elder Tabo, would you like to make a comment to help us?
I think you summarized the point as I laid it out. Maybe, I think the only thing I'll add is an anecdote. Which is, I think, my observation and experience from 2009. Through the dispensations, through to the midnight cry. Through to the present. A very strong emphasis used to be placed on holding on to the lines,
Il y avait vraiment une emphase très forte sur le fait qu'il nous fallait nous accrocher aux lignes.
and that there is safety in being grounded and in any controversy.
Et qu'il y avait cette sécurité d'être ancré s'il y avait émergence de n'importe quelle controverse.
Consulting the lines and the prophetic pattern,
Et d'être ancré en regardant les lignes et le schéma répétitif, prophétique.
along with our principles of interpretation.
Et en ajoutant aussi nos principes d'interprétation.
So all I sought to do was to bring the question back
Donc ce que j'ai essayé de faire, c'est de ramener cette question
to that fundamental consideration.
à cette considération fondamentale.
Is what of the lines that form our model for, what do the lines that form our model say
Et c'est ce que les lignes qui forment notre modèle disent
about the nature or character of the messages that are unsealed in each dispensation?
sur la nature ou le caractère des messages qui sont décelés à chaque dispensation.
And of course, I think the point was made that that the midnight cry message is equality.
Alors bien évidemment, le point a été dit que le prix nuit et l'égalité.
And this was being juxtaposed against dates and the importance of understanding dates.
Et cela a été juxtaposé les dates et la compréhension et l'importance de comprendre ces dates.
But the message of equality is couched in prophecy.
Mais le message de l'égalité est ancré dans la prophétie.
You can't separate it from the dates and the importance of understanding them.
On ne peut pas le séparer des dates et le fait de comprendre la prophétie.
Understanding the dates, the players, and the events.
Comprendre les dates, les joueurs et les événements.
All that is bound up with the concept that the test for this time is the message of equality.
Tout ça c'est lié en fait avec le test de notre dispensation qui est l'égalité.
So I think it would be dangerous to develop an understanding where you kind of see them as separate.
Et je pense que ce serait dangereux de développer une compréhension où on les voit séparés.
So, in my mind,
Donc, dans mon esprit,
we have all the freedom
nous avons toute cette liberté
to share different concepts, different understandings, and to believe different concepts, different understandings.
nous avons toute cette liberté de partager différentes croyances et différentes compréhensions.
But at some point in the progression of the development of the message in our dispensation,
Mais à un point du développement de notre message et de sa compréhension,
I think we have to know what is or what isn't.
je pense que nous devons savoir ce qui est et ce qui n'est pas.
Those are my thoughts.
C'est ça que je voulais dire.
One thing that I liked about what Elder Tabo just said, and I assume we all picked it up, is that we have a message, if I were to call it an internal message, that we believe the great test is equality, and that even though the world may be doing things, that test is being applied to us. We are being challenged and hopefully changed. And collectively and individually, we're going through an experience that is re-molding us, re-engineering the way we think about ourselves and others. What we have been doing, and I think what we are required to do, is to not only go through that personal experience, but to put that theological model, that idea, into a prophetic framework. Which has, as has just been explained, means you need to know events and dates. So these aren't just eternal issues or values. That you can learn about or understand at any point in Earth's history. Whilst that may be true, what we're required to see is something happening in the world in which we live. And if you don't, or if you're unable to trace those events, what's happening all around you won't have the required impact upon you that it's supposed to have. Which is what we call prophecy. I wanted us to turn to a verse. This was something that Pedro sent me during the break. Does anybody want to volunteer to explain the verse or to comment on it? Or do you want the verse first? Oh, go on then. We'll give you the verse first. Zechariah, chapter 10, verse 1. It's a verse that you're familiar with. I'll read it in the King James. Ask ye of the Lord rain in the time of the latter rain. I'll just stop there. That's just the first part. Who wants to have a go? Maybe I'd ask this question. Which questions it's related to? Question 1 or question 2? Are we okay with it being question 2? Who wants to have a go at the verse? Just the first half. Jonathan.
The time of the latter rain is a reference to your second question. About knowing what time, about knowing the dispensation that we're in.
You just tell me when you finished that.
Yeah, I think that's...
Okay. Anyone else?
I would simply add the word to ask for understanding the light of that dispensation in the time of the latter rain. And it's important to know you're in the latter rain.
Anyone else? So, when I read this verse, it seems to me that it presupposes that you're in the time period when you expect the rain to come. So you can just imagine in an agricultural model, you know when the rainy season is, April to August, and what you would do based upon that knowledge is that you would have already have ploughed the field, sown the seed long before. So you have to have known when the latter rain was coming long before it was ever there. Otherwise you would have planted the seed at the wrong time of the year. Does that sound reasonable? So, various things have already happened. The plant's already germinated and sprung forth the blade. And once that's happened, if everything's gone correctly, it's April. And so now you know you've entered into the rainy season. And so in this time period that you're in now, that you knew was coming, and you know that you're now in, now you're required to pray for the rain that's coming in that season. Is that a fair enough reading of the verse? So if that's the case, and you know what your target is, it's maturity of the plant, harvest, then you know unless you get this rain, you don't get the end result. It's all a waste of time. So you know the receiving of the rain is, if I can put it this way, salvational for the plant. It's a life and death issue for that plant, whether it rains or not. It's a life and death issue to the plant, whether it rains or does not rain. and you have to have a specific type of rain. And it has to come at the anticipated time. So, this is not an unfamiliar text to us. And it was offered to us as evidence to show that it is a salvational matter, to know that you're in the Sunday law period. Any questions? So I'll leave that. We've got the verse. So I'm hoping we can all begin to consider, if we haven't already accepted, that it is salvational to know that you're in the Sunday law history. So, going back to question 1, which was my original question. We had 4 dates. I'm going to leave out January the 6th now. And the question was, does it make a difference on which date you begin this dispensation? And some people have said yes, and others have said no. So I think we all agree that these 4 dates are a process. Hopefully we can all agree with that. I think Douglas read from some material that showed the steps. And I believe we should all have been familiar with those steps even before he reminded us of them. Remember, we've missed the story of the Democrats. If we could put it this way, the reason we have left them out is because this is the story of the rise of Trump, President Trump. So unless he's voted as the Republican presidential candidate in July, nothing happens. So we could go one step back and we could have the primaries where there's all these Republican politicians who are all saying, I'll have a go. But no one's focused on that. And they've said the journey really begins in July. And they'll have a logic for that. And then by the time you get to January, the inauguration, you can see now that Trump has now become the president officially, properly. So we can see that this is a process. It goes cause and effect from one step to the next. So I can understand why people at that level would say, what difference does it make if it's July the first step, or November the 2nd, or December the 3rd, or January the 4th? Because what do you see that's common to all of these? Before the word was election, and now we might say President Trump. Or the rise to power. In very simple terms. So we could argue that as July is the first step, that must be the one that we should target. And someone else might say, that's fair enough, I agree that's the beginning of the journey. But he's not wielding any power until number 4. And that's what we should be marking. That now he's in the seat and he's in control. That should be the beginning of this Sunday law story. And then someone will say, how do I know if it's the beginning of the rise or the completion of the rise? Because it doesn't seem to make much difference. We might call it just a moot point. Moot, M-O-O-T. What's moot? It's not going to say you. Yeah, unimportant, irrelevant. So, then let's all be friends and say, let's just bookend it. So we make the house bigger. So more people are welcome now. Whatever date you want to pick, you can join, and we're all okay. So I think when people say number 1, this waymark of the Sunday law isn't salvational, this is my guess. The reason you think it's not important is because on the surface it just seems like these are steps of the same story. The rise of Trump. The rise of the Republican Party. If we want to get prophetic, the rise of the seventh kingdom. So at that level, maybe we could all agree that perhaps we can have some latitude, some freedom to pick any one of these four, or all of these four, and just say this is the beginning. One, Curtis is focusing on the beginning, and Eleanor is focusing on the end. But they're all saying the same thing. The rise of this kingdom. Someone took us to Revelation 13, the rise of the dragon. So at that level, it can't be salvational. Cannot. What if there's a different narrative? What if you realize that each of these different dates have a hidden surprise? I don't want to call it a trap. But it's not as simple as just the rise of this new kingdom, the rise of Trump. And then, if that's the case, that there's more to these dates than just this surface understanding, then what you're required to do is take inspired models, or models from inspiration, if you want to say it that way. That's the Bible and Ellen White. Only. You take those models and then you see what these four speakers are saying, beside the surface understanding. If all they were teaching was this is the rise of this kingdom of President Trump, this dragon power that's coming, it wouldn't matter which date you go for. Sorry, was that too long? So, no, yeah. So if all they were saying was it's the rise of Trump, the rise of the kingdom of the dragon, and all they're picking is specific events in that rise. Because they've got some bias or some perspective. It wouldn't make any difference, would it? What if there's more to the story than that? That if you look under the surface and are able to understand able to discern why one is focusing on one date and another is focusing on another date, and the reason they're focusing on these different dates is because they have a different model than the other teacher, then you do know that they're teaching very different things. So what appears to be something similar ends up becoming something quite different. So you don't have four speakers discussing a common idea. You have four speakers who are speaking about things that are quite different. And if they're speaking of things that are quite different, then you have to determine if those differences are important or not. So, I'll ask you, but ask yourself this question. Do you think these speakers, when they look at what they believe and what the other four believe, that the difference is important to them? Do you think it's important to them what they're teaching in comparison to the others? Everybody agree? Because if it wasn't important, they could just back down and just say, yeah, it's not that important. I think the fact that they're not doing that is indicative that they believe that their version of this story is the right version. Which to me indicates that they're saying the other ones have a wrong version. And if that's the case, we don't have a common story. We have four models that lay out the beginning of the Sunday law. So, if we go back to what was drawn here, this time of the end here would be the Sunday law. And if we say that there's some kind of unsealing or an explanation of what's going on, you're going to be taken through an experience. And this journey that you'll go through from time of the end to increased knowledge, formalization, etc., each step is built upon the previous one. And therefore, depending on how you start your journey, decides where you end your journey. So if you start your journey in a different place, you're pretty sure that it will end in a different place. I think most of them realize that. I think many of us don't. And that's why people are unsure of whether these issues are so important. Just want to mention something. If we agree on this graphic, this line that's at the top, it all seems so nice, neat and easy. But it's not that straightforward. And part of the difference between how these speakers view their message, understand what these truths are teaching them, let me see if I can find a Spirit Prophecy quote. Give me a second. If I can't find it, then I'll paraphrase. Okay. Well, let me see if I can find a better reference for it. Give me a second. Testimonies of the Church, Volume 5. Page 216. What are you doing, members, in the great work of preparation? Okay, so if it's preparation, and Ellen White is writing this in real time, and you may or may not know when Testimonies to the Church Volume 5 was written. It was written in the 1880s. Well, I think the first half of that decade. So it's before 1888. I think. Or at least it's in that decade for sure. There is no Sunday law that's happened. So are we okay with that? There's no Sunday law. Anybody disagree? So she says we're in the time period of preparation. So the preparation period is before the Sunday law. Maybe you could work that out just through logic. What are you doing in the great work of preparation? They're preparing to do a work. I mean, as a Adventist, you know what the work you're supposed to be doing. Because after the close of probation, you don't do any work. Is that right? So there are 3 dispensations. Preparation, the one that we're in. And then there's the close of probation. And I'm saying there's no work here. And I'm saying there's no work here. There's no work at the close of probation because the work is finished. So we'll put end. And there's no work at the beginning because we're preparing. So that would be the start. And I'm suggesting that that's the Sunday law and close of probation. What are you doing in the great work of preparation? Those who are uniting with the world are receiving the worldly mold. And preparing for the mark of the beast. And then she speaks of another group. I'm just going to call them good. So there are 2 groups. And the ones who aren't doing well, what their behavior is in the preparation time, it says they're getting ready or preparing. It actually uses the word preparing to get the mark of the beast. All good with that? And we all know that this dispensation is when you get the mark of the beast. Anyone got any questions? Or they disagree? Or they want to comment? Debbie?
Just to clarify, did I hear you correctly? You said you will call them good?
There's a second sentence after it says mark of the beast.
Right.
I didn't read the sentence. I said there's another group,
Okay.
and I'll just call them good.
Thank you. That clarifies.
Those who are distrustful of self, who are humbling themselves. So group 1 is ready to get the mark of the beast. And the other one are ready for what? I'm going to say to give the loud cry. It doesn't say that in the passage. Oh, let me not do that. Ready to, I don't know if someone just said it, the seal of God. Then we'll keep them the same. Mark of the beast, mark of God. So, if we're okay with that, When are you being tested? I'll do, let me do this. I'm going to call this 1, 2, 3. And my question is, when are you, and the you are these SDAs. She says, what are you doing? I'm saying she's speaking to Seventh-day Adventists. Today we would call them what? Today we would call them, we'll go with priests. Or the 144,000, if you're okay with that. So the question is, when are you being tested? 1, 2 or 3? Jonathan, is that your answer? Jonathan says number 1. Gloria, number 2. Debbie, number 1. Number 1. So, number 1, Rebecca. We don't have to guess because the passage tells you. I think. Today, what are you doing? There's things that are happening all around you. And some of you are making bad choices and some of you are making good choices. Based upon your current behavior, you will receive your reward. So, when do you receive your reward? Number 1, number 2, number 3. Gloria? Number 3. Jonathan, number 2. Anyone else? Put your hand up if it's number 2. Okay? So all the people that said number 1 before, they're all saying number 2 now. Mostly. And people who said number 2, the first question, is now saying number 3. Well, you've changed. 1 or 2?
I think 1.
1. You receive your reward at number 1.
According to the quote, yes.
According to your reading of the quote. Okay, so do we all agree that the mark of the beast is given in the Sunday Law dispensation? So nobody disagrees with that? Put your hand up if you disagree. If you disagree, Jonathan, say.
Just from reading the quote, I might be interpreting it wrong, but it looks like it says at the time of preparation.
Show me, just read the little bit that it says you received the mark of the beast outside of dispensation number 2.
In the first part, it says, she's asking, what are you doing, brethren, in the great work of preparation? That's not the part.
Do you agree that's number one?
Yes, but there's more to number one.
There's more to number one.
The next part says those who are uniting with the world
When?
are,
In number one?
if I'm reading it wrong, to me it sounds like number one.
Okay.
So she's using present tense, so those who are uniting with the world are receiving the worldly mold. Sorry, I missed the next part. And are preparing for the mark of the beast, so I changed back to 2.
Good. So, the mark of the beast is in the Sunday law history, and no one's got it in number one. Your behavior in number one determines what reward you get in number two. You know it's number two because she tells you what the reward is. The mark of the beast. And you can go elsewhere to know that the mark of the beast is in that dispensation. Two rewards, a mark of the beast or the mark of God. So, if the reward is given in number two, when are you being tested to know that you're going to get the reward? Number one. So we can all hopefully see it's number one. So, for the priests, the testing for the Sunday law happens before the Sunday law. So, in the words, let's see. In the model that we were given earlier, what was this waymark here? Shut door, unsealing, formalization, and increase of knowledge. So there's an unsealing, increase of knowledge, formalization, test, and then there's a shut door. Now when you move to the model above, you don't call it a shut door, you'd give it a different name. But the issues that surround the Sunday law we'll call it the reward. The success or failure happens beforehand. Then if we all agree with that? So, when we talk about this picture, you have to be careful because we can do the same here, and we have to consider when is this testing happening. About your interaction with the Sunday law. Your receiving of the mark of the beast or the seal of God. Now remember, we have to translate these very simplistic models into real life. Now, all of us know that real life is a bit more complicated than these simple patterns indicate. But without these simplified models, I don't think we have an ability to know the experience that we should be having, in fact, the experience that we are having. I try to avoid promoting, or is it de-promoting, speakers. But the issue that we've just spoken about now is one that I think there's a disagreement on. At least of lack of emphasis. So I just want to put that was a kind of a side point. It's obviously connected to what we're speaking about, so I didn't just say it in some random way. Revelation 17. We have a beast and a woman. So at the last camp meeting, what I said, if I didn't say it explicitly, I said it in general terms. That I wasn't going to answer the following question. Why have all you 5 people connected the Sunday law to the 2024 election? It's for you to explain that. But if that's what you're all doing, I think everybody now can see, which is what I think the point Macca was making, that you can just see what's happening. We can all see. We've got President Trump. We said the 7th kingdom. And we said the dragon. And I'm going to put Revelation 13 when I say dragon there. Yeah. So the question that was posed in Slovakia was, when we get to Revelation 17 and we have this beast and woman, what are they? How do we understand what they mean? And before we get to making any application of them, because each of those 5 speakers, I would contend, have to have made an application. Whether they've stated that explicitly or implicitly. So we began an exploration to try to understand what these 2 symbols meant. And this is as far as we got. That this, I think we used different words, but I'm just going to say entity. And today I'm going to say it's an entity that has ideas. Or we might say an idea. We've used the word ideology, we could use the term worldview. So we haven't made an application of that. Before you were to make an application, we'd want to try to understand what the beast is. Together, as we move through studies, that's what we need to come to an understanding of. And I want to recommend or suggest that each of you individually, or even in your fellowships, you begin to try to unpack what that beast is. I suspect once you get a model for each one that seems to work, that seems to have integrity, you'll be able to take them back to those 5 speakers and ask them to explain how this model works in their application. You can either do that literally to ask them, or you can do it by investigating their study and doing it for yourself. When you've done that, or the process of doing that, I suspect will show you whose message is correct and whose message is incorrect. Let's pray. Holy God, we thank you that we have come to a place in our experience that we have the privilege to exercise our human rights to decide and determine our destiny for ourselves. That we're free to agree or disagree with anyone about anything. We know that this freedom comes with a price. I'm thankful that we have that freedom despite any risks that might come with it. Surely this is what you want for your people. For them to come to a place in their experience where they don't feel forced to accept something that they don't agree with. In Jesus' name. Amen.